So first I want to thank our host, Checker, for sharing this great space, Jerry for organizing, and especially all of you for joining us tonight. We're really excited to hear the stories of these speakers. I actually asked around prior to the event, and then even around the room a little earlier, what resonated with you, the audience, when you read the title of our panel. And so I'm going to start off asking a few questions based on that feedback, and then we are definitely leaving enough time to open it up for Q&A from you. So the title is Journey as Women Engineering Leaders, Stories, Challenges, and Lessons Learned. We chose this topic because we felt that we can really share these stories and in the process support and mentor women leaders. I'm going to start off with a question for Jessica. As you grow in engineering leadership and rise up to a new role or take on a different leadership role, you're faced with new challenges. Could you share something notable from your experience and what you learned?
Sure, and as a little bit of background context on that, I have to give like a little blurb about my career history because it was relevant to this answer. So I'm trained as a software engineer. I joined some friends of mine at a startup out of MIT called KSplice, straight out of school, which was like a wonderful company around some very cool technology about rebootless kernel updates on Linux. I joined that company as an IC and moved into like a tech lead role as the company got bigger. The company was acquired by Oracle. The same group of people left Oracle like a year and a day after the acquisition and started company number 2, a company called Zulip, which was sort of like Slack before Slack existed. Timing is everything. Where I was a founder of bookkeeping engineering. That company we worked on for a while before starting some conversations with Dropbox. Discovered that our missions were very aligned, got acquired by Dropbox, moved out west. I was an engineering director there, did a bunch of interesting work, ran like 140-person engineering product and design work, did a bunch of operational work as well. Did like a solid tour of duty there, and so in particular Dropbox worked very closely with the executive team on a bunch of initiatives. And then after a solid 3 years of change at Dropbox, left to rejoin my perennial founding team at Pilot, pilot.com. We are a bookkeeping firm powered by software. All of your companies should probably use us. But so I've worked with the same founding team for 10 years across now 3 companies and 2 acquisitions. In this really sort of natural progression from like IC to like tech lead to like EM of one team to several teams, and then sort of up and down as like, we've like bigger companies, then collapsing back down to, Pilot today is like a 30-person startup. And so I had a chance to experience sort of all of those phases in terms of company phases and like phases of engineering management growth. One of the most formative experiences I had was at Dropbox, and it was really around like being in quite a senior leadership role, but not being an executive, and like learning how to manage up with the executive team. And I learned a lot about myself over those 3 years because I sort of in my history, I had had a lot of leadership success and management success as sort of playing the role of like populist rabble rouser. I'm good at that shtick. I'm like, it's like sort of power to the people, like power to the ICs, like fighting the man who's like not listening to us about like org design changes we need to make or investing in the foundation or things like that. And I learned a bunch of really hard lessons about like how to support people above me in the org chart and like how to make them more effective, and coming at it from a place of us all being on the same team and trying to move the company forward together, as opposed to coming from a place of like my power comes from playing this sort of adversarial role with them. So I learned a bunch of lessons about myself and like why it was that I tended to have this adversarial relationship with executive teams when I wasn't the boss. But then I'm often in a position where I'm the boss, like I am today, which is great. But like a Dropbox is a really strong exercise for doing that. And like the way that I had these experiences actually came, like the way that I learned about this in a structured way was through like executive coaching programs at Dropbox. And I found this to be extremely transformational for me. Like I don't know how many folks in the audience, that's like a thing that is an investment that your companies are making in management, but like I thought it was hokey to begin with and like became a total convert and believer because it was like such a transformational experience for me as a leader and just also like as a person. I joke that like my husband noticed the differences in me after going through this executive coaching program because like I was a much kinder and more patient person in my like marital relationship as well as a manager and as a leader. And that was that was really important to me. And I think like the meta comment on that, or like the thing that I always end up talking about with folks when I'm talking about leadership stuff is like at the executive level or in like senior leadership roles is like all about relationships, and because it's all about relationships, it's like all about how you show up in the relationship, and so it all comes back to like confidence in what it gets so far away from the technical stuff at that point. It's so about how you are able to show up in a variety of situations and work with a variety of people, and that was like an important lesson to me that I would have benefited from learning earlier.
Great. That actually works really well to segue into our next question. Talking about relationships, you touched on confidence, and one common reaction when you take on a new role is self-doubt or dealing with conflicting personal priorities. So, Ming, I was wondering, what advice would you give young women leaders who doubt their leadership skills or are conflicted due to young families or personal commitments?
Cool. So actually, I want to echo Jessica. I actually also had a coach that was super helpful that I can share my experience with you later. On the self-doubt and personal conflict side, I personally don't have a family, but I often have conversation as a manager supporting women on the team. I often talk with them about, hey, when they are shying away from opportunities, encourage them to really think about taking it, even though you're thinking that maybe I'm not good enough for that role. Never realized that one day the same conversation would happen to me. So what I feel was it's a lot more subconscious. So a year earlier, my manager is taking up a new role. So he was asking, hey, Ming, are you interested in taking my role? So it's a much bigger team. I was leading a team of 100 engineers. His team was like 400, a lot more diverse teams. Sounds like a great opportunity. But my immediate reaction was no, and I thought I had a really solid reason. Because I joined Facebook as a in-front ranking engineer. My goal has always been working from more like lower level technology to more user-facing. That's where my passion is at. I always joke that I'm a designer, want to be engineer. So I thought with my current team size, I had enough cycle for me to, beyond engine work, I can work on the product strategy, spend a bit more time taking design lessons, working with the designer and product managers and all that. So with a bigger team, I thought that's gonna make it harder for me. And further down the path of spending all my time on the engineering task, I wouldn't have enough time to think about strategy. And the other reason I have was I think eventually I have a personal passion of helping women with fertility challenges because I did do lots of egg freezing a few years ago. That was a painful process. I learned a lot from that, and I wanted to really get back to the community. So I thought eventually maybe I wanted to have more time to do that. So with that plan in mind, I shouldn't take a bigger commitment. So I thought those are perfect reasons. I told my manager no for those reasons. He was disappointed, but he didn't say much. A few days later, I got an email and a meeting invite from Sheryl Sandberg. I kind of get a feeling that I was like, okay, so that's probably the time I'm meeting with her. But I kind of get a sense it's about that. But I thought I had a solid reason. I expect I would go in having a conversation with her about helping women, and she would be very supportive. But the thing that's surprising to me was the meeting was short, and she was very affirmative. She's like, hey, I heard you were given a bigger role, I didn't take it. I always try to make effort to talk to women in that situation to really ask you, did you think it through, and why are you not taking it? And I started running around, you know what, I want to do more product, I think that's too much time commitment, and I eventually want to help women, so and all that. But her question is really, are they like all the reasons that's like solid? Can you overcome some of this? Maybe it's more short term. Can you do it long term? So I went back home. I thought about it. On the one hand, it's really hard to say no to Cheryl. On the other hand, I realized a lot of it is also me being self-doubt and worry about, hey, maybe I don't have enough time to do everything. So fast forward a year, I took the role, and now I think I was underwater for quite a while. But after a while, I think I figured out a way to be more efficient with a bigger team, and I think having seeing more different products did actually help me having like grow in product strategy, and also make a little bit of a step on the like my separate time to work on things I'm passionate about. So I shared that experience with the people. Internally, I wrote a post about it, and I got so many reach outs from people. One of the girl, she was a product marketing manager, and she was saying that reading the post, realized that I'm 8 months pregnant. I'm 2 months before I'm taking the paternity leave, but I start to say no to projects because I don't know if I'm gonna complete it in time. I don't know what to do, but like seeing your post, realize that maybe a lot of us are doing this subconsciously. So my lesson that I learned was really think twice when you say no to an opportunity, and see if there's any way for you to make some changes and make things work. So that's my story.
Great. Erica, did you want to add?
Yeah, so I have a slightly different perspective. I'm a new mom. I have a 6-month-old who's currently at daycare. My first night of late babysitting at daycare, so knock on wood that he's like not screaming when I get home in 2 hours, which I expect him to be because I recently learned that he doesn't listen without me. So new constraints on my life. But I can share a little bit about sort of my history and how being a new mom has sort of factored into that. And it's been interesting in that it has sort of clarified my purpose and my resolve to be happy at work. So I had sort of been wanting to start a family for a while. So I've always waited, like, oh, it'll be this beautiful time when like everything is perfect at work, and I love the place where I'm working, and I'm going to be there forever, and that's the time I'm going to have kids, right? Was unhappy at work, and was like, okay, I'm going to leave this job, go to another job, it's going to be like perfect and great, I'm going to wait, a few years, and then it's going to be great. Sort of fast forward a little while, I was like, not super happy, but also like not super into this, like waiting for the rest of my life to be perfect for my family. My family is a priority, and like I'll make the rest of it work. And so I got pregnant, realized that I did not want to stay at my job for the next 9 months, and so I quit as soon as I could. And then I went and found a new job, and then told my entire first one-on-one that I was pregnant, and that I would be on maternity leave in 5 months. That was at Stripe. They were obviously incredibly supportive, which has been great. I've been back now for 2 months since my maternity leave. And I had a number of those moments of sort of taking on more responsibility right when I knew that the rest of my life was about to get a lot more complicated. And so far, I have tried my darndest to say yes to those opportunities and to figure out how to make that work. And it's a work in progress. We'll see how it goes. Check in with me in a year. But at least for me and for my family, and unfortunately my husband is incredibly supportive of my career and everything that I do. I get joy out of work. I like challenging myself, and when opportunities arise, I'm sort of saying yes and figuring out how to make it work. I look at sort of those around me. I don't work with, none of my peers are parents, but I view that like if they're able to get their work done during the day, then like I probably can too. And that if not, I do feel like I have a support network around me where I can sort of raise my hand when needed. And I try to be very open with sort of what my schedule is and the constraints that I'm under. So I'm pumping at work right now that takes an hour and a half a day. I have a very clear start and end time to my day, and that's something that my team knows. It's on my calendar, we talk about it. My team found out today when our babysitter fell through at the last minute because I was on a call with them and my husband called to say that we had to redo our plans. And so I'm trying my best to sort of normalize it a little bit. so that hopefully hopefully there's a wave of more women and more new moms joining the field or staying in the field, that they can sort of look around and see role models and folks that they work with and realize like, yeah, if she can do it, then I probably can too. I don't necessarily need to make those push-ups.
I do think like talking with the team would be so helpful. We're in a situation where like a bunch of us joined the team at the same time, so there are waves of babies, and just like talking about it to make everyone start to think, oh, how can I help in these situations? How can we fill in during paternity leave and be more respectful of people's time?
Yeah, there's been a huge parent wave at Strike recently. I don't know how much of pure chance that is, but there's a bit of like stage of company where the early employees are maybe getting to a certain age and then hiring some folks who are at an age where they're more likely to have families. But I found actually there's an incredibly strong support network among the new mothers and among all the parents, which has been really nice.
That's something that's really important to get to find that support group in your team and in your company, similar to getting support coaching in your company as well.
I'm excited to check in on this in a couple of years because probably 70% women, 50% women on the engineering team, a little more than that actually, and then 70% women overall. So in terms of like normalizing like various experiences that are correlated with being women,
It's also been interesting to me that we have a parenthood channel at Stripe, and it's predominantly men. The company probably is no huge surprise, but it's been very nice to see that parenting is such a shared experience, honestly, between genders. That you're also trying to sort of like often the guys sort of know what you're going through and are more than willing to sort of stand up for you since they're going through some of that themselves and they're maybe at home supporting their own partners who are also working.
So I wanted to touch on that a bit. We're in tech; it's more male dominated, but in the sense of talking about developing your individual leadership style when the social is a masculine norm. So we'd just love for you to share what has influenced your leadership style and how do you shape your own style. I know,
Sure. So I've been told for my entire life that I come off as super masculine in the way that I interact with people. I'm like, and actually, so my two co-founders and I'm like easily the most direct and like aggressive probably of the three of us. Wasim, our CEO, is like a gentle soul and is always reining me in. And like at Dropbox, we had like this, not to harp on executive coaching, but like so Dropbox was a couple of years ago at this point, but during you gather this like 360 feedback that is like input into your executive coaching, and so people like tear you down across all these super fine-grained dimensions of your personality, and like the feedback was very like Jessica like means business. She's like super like career oriented in a way that is like kind of scary, and yeah, it was funny to read, not funny, but like reading the comments, they actually came off as super gendered, and we actually saw a bunch of women who went through the executive coaching together. We like compared what types of language were used about us, and it was like definitely language was used that was not used with men. The term ladder climber was exclusively used with women. It's like cool, great. But what was interesting, so but that experience was really interesting because I care about being effective. Being direct by nature or like being down to business by nature is like totally great with me as long as it's working. And so I think over the course of like 10 years or so of management, through just experiencing working with managing up, managing down, managing sideways a variety of people, through getting feedback like this, executive coaching feedback, it has caused me to soften my style, actually. It's actually caused me not to become more masculine. I was already just like over on this end of the spectrum. It actually caused me to soften my style because some people respond better to vulnerability or asking how you're doing in the one-on-one before you launch into the business that needs getting taken care of and things like that. So the feat, like being honest about what is effective and then working on what is effective for managing or leading a variety of people is that was like the salient detail of those conversations, and it wasn't like a masculine style or feminine styled way of interacting. But it was funny for me because like I was coming at it from a place that was like sort of, people would tell me that I was coming from a very masculine place, and I ended up I think getting more towards a more centered feeling way of interacting with people. And these days like the parts of me that are most vulnerable tend to be the things that make me connect really well with my reports, in particular in a world where most of the people that I work with every day are women, which is by the way an incredible feeling. Like, I assume that I'm the only person who has that experience, and everybody else is in a standard tech role. Yeah, killing it, love it.
Nice.
It's like a beautiful experience. It's like the vibe at work is totally different. But so I'm a crier. I cry easily, so despite the tough exterior, like, and if I see you through that, I'm gonna, right? So like I'm a crier. Like I've cried in front of like Dropbox's founders. I've cried in front of like all kinds of embarrassing people. But what happens is when my reports see gruff but actually kind of soft on the inside, Jessica, being vulnerable in that way, they're like, oh, I can be vulnerable too. Like I can open up to you. And that's actually a really powerful connection. So I think I've like over the decades I've been able to tap into like all parts of myself in a way to figure out how to connect with people, and that's actually a really powerful, beautiful thing.
I'm a crier too.
I don't feel because when I have reports for criers, they don't feel awkward about it because I tell them the story. I'm like, look, I have cried in front of Drew Houston. Don't worry, it's fine. Right.
Erica, did you want to share?
Sorry, what
Leadership style, your individual leadership style.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit hard to define, and there's a whole, at least for me, that's what we just got like super concrete feedback. Hard to define like sort of what's been influenced by what. I think the feedback we get is can be really hard to parse. Like I've also gotten the like you need to be more vulnerable feedback, and so it's hard.
When has a man told me?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure never. I'm pretty sure never. But like Jessica, I think I recognize that like. Bias be what it will, there's probably something there that I can do better. And I think I tend to be a very private person. I have a very boring but lovely little family life. And I tend to just kind of keep it over there. And particularly now, as a new mom, I'm going to make a big effort to like talk about it because I do think it is helpful to set an example. It's something that's like actually kind of fun to talk about. My kids are really cute. But I think it's helped me in sort of consciously getting out of my sort of private personal shell. Helps other people open up to me too. Right? If I'm like, oh, I have this like, my kid is sick, and I was like, oh, like my knee hurts, like I'm going to a therapist, and that's actually important, right? Like that's not going to that person's life and is affecting their schedule, and I think is being very aware that is important. Maybe more aware than others, because I think maybe when we get that feedback more has helped. And yeah, I think it's hard to say like what sort of comes from what. I think my general style is like very collaborative, very product oriented. I don't want to say that those are feminine things, but they do come from my experience, and part of my experience is being a woman. Part of my experience is also the schools that I went to and people that I worked with, and I like to think that I've sort of gotten little tricks in my bag from all of those things.
So one of the things that we mentioned was, Jessica mentioned was like managing up, but something that I've heard from audience members is as you're rising up, like one of the things that you want to be a part of is having a seat for tough conversations for when decisions are made. And so I'd like to hear what your thoughts are and your experience on that.
So when I was hearing the question, I was more thinking what kind of conversations do I need here. But that actually brings back my experience with the executive coach I work with. And personally, I'm more of an introvert person. So actually, throughout the years, I got a lot of feedback about, hey, Ming, you had great points in one-on-one conversations, but how come you never speak up in meetings? To the point that I actually started to work with my coach. I had two findings on why I'm not speaking up. One is that first we did like personality test and like really into that. How many of you know the 9 times anagram? You don't know?
Sorry,
Okay.
the other one, the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, Myers-Briggs, yeah.
Yeah.
So for the 9 times anagram, that was really interesting one. So I'm a type 5, which is a thinker. So as a thinker, they describe all your childhood behaviors. I tend to play along, read a lot, terrible at sports, never can ride a bike until I'm like old enough. As a thinker, there is positive side and negative side. So the positive side of thinker is that you think things through a lot in your mind. So when you actually say something, it tends to be very thoughtful. But then the negative side is that you tend to overthink things. So knowing my personality make me to try to be more conscious when I'm making decisions on like should I speak up, should I not. So I try to push myself to use gut more than mind, which I think helped a lot. And also I think another thing I realized is that this is maybe like not only to women, but a lot more women are tend to be like, when I speak, I want to be 100% right. So that made it really hard for you to say something. And I actually had an extreme example at work where one guy would speak up when he's like 5% right. And he's like totally cool with that. And he's like totally comfortable when people point out, hey, what you said is happening. So seeing him as an example made me realize that maybe we should all like tweak a little bit and be like center toward the center. So that's one thing that helped me a lot. Because I feel that to get a seat at the tough conversations, you first wanted to make sure that you can actually speak up, represent your opinions, and people know that you have really good points. The other learning I had was more like how to try to be more helpful. Because I had a conversation where people would say, hey, can you make me a manager? Because like when I make a really good point, my team don't really like listen to me. Those people, they are very young, but they are very opinionated. What I realized is more like it's actually easier to influence over authority because at the end of the day, people have independent thinking. So that it's better like if actually you convince people with a long time trust and credibility you build with people. So one thing I've learned seeing people being super effective was try to be very helpful when you see someone struggling, reach out, offer help or advice. And over time, people will see that you come up very authentic and you're really helpful and generally have really good points. So I think combining with the two usually the most helpful thing for me. I'm not sure if you guys have any other suggestions here.
Do you mind sharing again the name of that personality test?
I'll send it to 9 times of anagram.
9 times of anagram.
Yeah.
I think one part of maybe sometimes getting yourself to the table or asking to be at the table for big conversations is your confidence and your expertise in the area. And it's like very random, but there was this article that I read by Mindy Kaling a few years ago. And there's a point in there that I really liked and really resonated with me, which was about how she built confidence, obviously in a very different field. And basically you have to do the work. Like you need to feel entitled to be at the table and in the context of this question. But you have to earn that entitlement. You don't get that entitlement. You earn that entitlement by doing the work and deserving that point at the table. At that point, you should have the confidence because you've worked for it, and then you should sort of use that confidence to get that. And that just resonated with me with like sort of become the expert, become that helpful person. Build that confidence, know that you belong where you are, and then once you have that confidence, use that not to your advantage, but in order to have the impact that you can.
So I'm only going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience. So we don't have a mic, so just be prepared to just share your questions, raise your hand. So I'm actually going to pose this to the whole panel. Do you have a resource, a book, a blog, podcast, anything that you recommend for our audience that would help, that or has helped you in your leadership journey? I'll start with me.
Resource. So I actually write a lot of the blogs I follow a bunch of people on on the, actually the name is blanking for me, where you write long blogs, to follow that.
Medium?
Medium, yeah. There are quite a few people I follow. I'm happy to share your names. That's really helpful. And the other thing is general address book, how to influence our new friends. That was really helpful as well.
Will Larson has actually a really good blog. It's the thing. I have to read it. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Will Larson at Stripe is a really useful engineering blog that I've enjoyed. I believe it's lethain.com, but Google could probably confirm or deny that for me. I found him a very thoughtful person and have a lot of great ideas. And also we're often discussing internally, but sometimes I get most of the value, not digital discussions, but just reading his blog.
I don't think everything's specific.
Okay. Great. So I'd love to open it up to the audience for any questions.
I was really intrigued by when Jessica was talking about how she learned to be more helping the senior team to be more productive versus an adversarial relationship. Could you please talk a little bit more about it? I feel like we're all going to have to come to that point in our career at some point.
Absolutely. So the central issue here is that the folks in the executive team at Dropbox, and I love these people to death, and I'm comfortable talking about this stuff today because like I love them, they love me, we've all been through this journey together. Dropbox is like full of super smart people who had never done their jobs for the first time at the scale they were doing it. And so there was a lot of like learning and growing on the job for the executive team. And I, as a younger, less patient person, perceived that as like incompetence that I didn't like working with. And was like a tool for, like, I would try to route around the incompetence as opposed to like trying to lift people up in the roles they were in as they were learning. And which is why I like run around rabble rousing and like spinning up working groups sort of like off the books to do things or talking shit about the VP in one-on-ones, because it was like a way to latch on. It was like, it seemed like a way to connect with people, to get them to do what I wanted them to do, but it wasn't the best way of doing it. And it also back on like the self-reflection front, like it was also coming from a place of like, well, I want people to think that I am competent. What is the best way to do this? Well, one way to do it is to like make other people look less competent, and then they will think I am competent in exchange. Which like actually serves you really well until it doesn't work anymore. I reported to the VP of engineering, and he and I like didn't get along for the first 2 years because he like detected a subversiveness in me, and I was like, man, you're not that good at your job, and you're not a good manager. But the problem is it undermined my ability to be effective on the most important projects, which were the ones that required buy-in from the executive team. And so I ended after I sort of root cause analysis this in myself, I like put a bunch of effort into like, and in particular once I realized that a lot of this was coming from a place of like my own insecurities about being perceived as competent. Once I was able to identify that, I was like, okay, the thing to do here is to work on repairing these relationships, figure out how to be supportive of these folks as they continue to grow, and like work together with them on these initiatives that are the most important for driving the company forward. And now we get along much better. We're like friends outside of, I'm no longer Dropbox, but we all get along great these days. And it's like, what is important? Like, what is important? What are the translatable takeaways from that experience? It's like, number one, like the things that you do the things that you do out of insecurity are like almost always bad for you in the long term, and like will undermine your ability to be effective. So like if you have any of that in yourself, it's like super important to figure out a way to identify it and then to rectify it. Number two, like there are modes of operation that like can have been historically really successful that cap you out, and you have to figure out how to get past that after a certain size, seniority level, etc. And like realizing that that's a thing, and you have to get rid of behavior, even especially the behaviors that used to work really well. that just don't work anymore at this level, like having a mindset around being willing to do that is super important. I think a third thing that I learned from that is reputation is really important, and it actually takes a really long time to fix reputational issues. People will hold a grudge against you, or remember a first impression, or remember the one time that you were in a bad mood with them for years. And it speaks to like trying to always put a good face on, like put your best foot forward as much as possible, and like realize and accept the fact that it can take a lot of effort, and it can take a lot of like direct conversations to offset a reputation you've earned for yourself. But this is all really important. Like I think back on those days very like fondly and with appreciation, because they were such a dense learning period for me. So that's some color commentary on it. Yeah.
I'd add one thing to that, which is also making sure that that relationship is with many people. Because what you don't want to have happen is that you do spend all that effort with one person, usually your manager is that person, if you were to choose one, and then that person disappears because they go off to another job or whatnot, and now you're sort of left without relationships. I think also what I've learned is it's really important to have relationships across the org, your manager's peers, your peers, so that you're not sort of like one bus factor away from totally rebuilding from scratch.
Yeah, so I have one question around like mentoring young women leaders. So one of the things that I have seen in the past while mentoring women leaders was they kind of have a little bit of like, victim of their own success, or like they feel like, the things that they have done, it just keeps on coming back to them rather than getting spread out. So have you guys felt like a situation where you're trying to promote a leader, a woman leader on your team, and had to kind of coach them to think about how to make themselves a better leader and not feel like they can't be that good leader, and feel like they don't have the chops to become like the next generation leader for that role. I know maybe kind of talked a little bit about that, but it's more about like how do you get them out of feeling like a victim rather than feeling empowered.
From my experience, it comes a lot more to, I think there is usually people have different type of response when you ask them to take on the leader role. A lot of people will just say no, especially women will say no at this place, and try to really understand why, and help people like reassure if you have that kind of concern, what can we work through together. So I think that will be important, just really to understand why. The second thing I find was helpful was also try to be very supportive at the very beginning to like really walk people through the role transition. I have a situation where the girl on the team, she's tech leading everything, but she like never feeling entitled to like tell somebody that hey, you should do a better job, or here's something that you should do. So I realized that, and we debunked why she didn't feel comfortable saying that, and get her to like want to coach her, and also like followed her to a few meetings, and sort of like, hey, here's what we should do, and like I think with initial support, that made it much easier for the person to take the first step.
Cool. So I have a question. First of all, thank you all for giving your time. This was like excellent and amazing insights from everyone. So for those of us that aren't at Dropbox and don't have an executive coaching program, I'm curious, especially for like more senior leadership, like how do you go about finding a coach? Like is it just frequently like going to these events, or like how do you recommend finding that person or people?
I think depending on the size of your org, you may be able to find somebody someone in a more senior role, not in your reporting chain, who can act a little bit in that function for you. I think a hired coach is like a unique position in that the company knows that that's their role, and so I think they give a lot of leeway to go specifically ask these probing 360 questions for you. So I wouldn't expect that a mentor in that type of position would provide exactly what a coach could, what a hired executive coach could. but would probably bring more expertise around your specific organization and the relationships there.
And the thing I'd add is, like, somewhat weirdly, at least in my experience, and this is true for you all, there's often more rigor at the IC level, and like the rigor magically disappears as you go up the org chart for a variety of things, like for accountability and feedback and a bunch of different things. So if that statement resonates with you, like there may be an opportunity to like apply pressure organizationally, like, hey, I'm a manager. I don't really get feedback. We should like ratchet up the feedback that's happening, sort of at every level in the hierarchy, not just like holding the IC's feet to the fire.
Yeah, I think that helps, and also like I actually find reaching out to people I want to get advice. Like I run into another woman leader in another team. Just at micro-education, we start to talk, and I start to talk about, hey, I had this issue with this man super aggressive at work, and like, we actually had to end up talking for a while about that. I think coaching a lot of times is to like keep asking questions until you identify what's the root issue there, and like bring a bit more structure about the labels on how to do it. So I think like just maybe you identify what people around you respect, and go to them with a goal like, hey, this is what I want to get better at. How can you, would you mind helping me? And so that would be helpful.
Well, one thing I'd add, a lot of people go to therapists. I don't think they talk about it a lot, but when it comes up, particularly among founders, everyone's like, oh yeah, like, me too, that's also helpful. I've heard a ton of people have found that to be incredibly helpful. I think they have a similar approach, which is like trying to get to the root cause of things and maybe able to, it's sort of a way that you can hire help, just to have someone sort of new and fresh to talk to who has really good approaches and understandings of sort of how brains work.
I actually have some resources. My company didn't offer coaching, and I asked multiple times saying like, hey, we really need it. There's like communication issues here. We like wanna, we can grow, and just never got the budget. So I actually went off on my own, asking like my friends in tech, like if they had coaches that they liked, reaching out to your network in that way. I ended up just finding one and used her for had her for 2 years until my company did finally get coaching, and we're actually using the service BetterUp, which we found to be a really good service, and so I would recommend that you look into it and see if your company can find the budget for it. It's a really great service, and it's not just for leaders. It's their mission is to start it early, and I firmly believe that. I too looked for a coach like later in my career, and the minute I had it, I was like, oh my gosh, if only I had talked to somebody 10 years ago, this would have been amazing. So it's never too early to reach out to see if you can get a coach.
And I can vouch for BetterUp. We have that at LinkedIn. That has been phenomenal for the first-time managers.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. We've used it for 6 months now, and we're going to continue to. Okay, one more question.
It's actually a good segue into my question, which is, as an IC, it's easier to measure your success either by like the number of features you're putting out, code you're writing, and usually your company has a rubric for you of like, this is how you get to the next level. For you personally, how do you measure success as a manager? And maybe as an offshoot of that, like how does your company measure that, and are those aligned?
I can take your time first. So I look at a few things. Generally, one results. If a team is not producing good results, I think there is some indication of something being wrong there. But beyond that, I also look at the health of the team. Are there like clear communication happening? Are roles clear? Are people being effective working together? The third I see is the growth of the people on the team, which is something I personally value a lot. When I see someone grow from with not much leadership skills to someone who actually stepped up and leading a team of people can do really good things, that's the thing I see and value a lot. It is a little bit more lagging though, so I think you will need to sort of looking for like some indicators and also like just be confident, believe in it, and to see that indication.
I was gonna say something interesting.
Same. My only, like, the most satisfying thing, like one of the most satisfying things in my life is there are people who've been with me through multiple companies, and it's like, if they must really like me if they want to and that's like an incredible, like, that means so much to me. Yeah.
And I can add a little bit. I also feel like as an individual contributor, you are measured with your craftsmanship. Whereas at a management role, you're kind of looked at for your leadership skills, which is driving through influence, collaboration, and kind of modeling this decision-making capability consistently. So that's kind of like a very different way of how you have never been measured before, and that becomes like your new measure. So it's kind of like, you're not coding anymore. It's not like how many review boards or whatever that you have to create in the repository or anything. It's just kind of like a very different way. And I think Jessica touched on it, which is like relationships and influence is actually like a measure as you grow through management.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers. And Jerry's going to come up to talk about the breakout sessions.